Welcome, 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 everyone, to another adventure into reality. Today, I am joined by my super explosive, intrepid co host, Martina Grubmueller.
Ruby Mueller. Well, I hope I'm not going to explode, but thank you very much for that introduction. And good to be here and with all of you guys and with you, Andrew.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot for joining me once again. You and I have had such powerful chemistry over the last 6 months of 5 months of doing shows. And we've had a lot of people that have put a lot of comments into the YouTube page, on the Facebook page. And we want to ask people who is in the chat room now, what do you thought of the nonsense show? So get a chance if you can go down into the chat room and type something in about the last show we did as nonsense. Today, we're going to be talking about the hidden treasures within everything around us, but we want to get some feedback on the nonsense show first, because a lot of people put up some really special comments about how nonsense suddenly made sense.
Yeah, that's why we call it the logic of nonsense, right? I love the oxymoron of it, you know.
Yes, and then that first line, nonsensical nonsense that will make no sense to the nonsensical points of view.
Exactly.
Yes.
Very mystical, you know.
And then Cardan goes, nonetheless, nonsense is more serious sense. You got a point. Okay. One person's nonsense is another person's ice cream cone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, you know, it's one of those things where you can actually be looking at the impact that nonsense can actually make, right?
That's right. And then there's, kiddie nonsense to adults, but it's pure fun to them.
Controversy is just one of those, isn't it, where you actually make people question, you know, not themselves necessarily, but question subject matters, question the reality, question us, you know, question anything, because that is the power of the question. Power of the question is what actually starts creating a different perspective. You don't have a different perspective. Sorry.
And how many times over the years of you knowing me, I tell you it's all about how to ask the question?
Yes.
And that's the key. So everyone out there that has this perception of me, I will repeat something I've repeated for 9+ years. It's not about the question. It's how you ask the question.
Okay, so that's an addition, actually. First thing is ask a question. And once you become really good at asking questions, it's actually how you ask the question. Now, say something on that a little bit.
So over the years, people who have been listening to me for a while, you hear people who come in with a really fast statement question that may have 6 to 12 parts to it. They don't know what they're doing, what they're saying, in the most part. And then there are the people who are going to ask only a selfish question with an expectation of a selfish answer. The energy in which your body is in position is going to tell me the nature of your question and the answer already. Now, I will say 50% of all questions asked to me, you already know, but you cannot verbalize it because you haven't reached high enough frequency to get the new language. And that's why I exist, to help you get the new language, quite literally.
Yeah, that's actually very good. I never, acknowledge that, to be honest. You know, somehow you always know these things, but it's nice to acknowledge that. The only thing I know about this question business is when somebody asks you a question, which is actually not a question because it's already an answer. They're just summarizing something and then just putting a little question mark at the end, which does not change perspective, right?
It does not change perspective. And I also talk about perception deception filters. Mm-hmm. So there are deceptions within our own perceptions that make us ask a question the wrong way. And that is I get that all the time. They're asking a question and the answer they're going to get is going to be so completely different than what they've asked, because there's something inside them in the deception filter that's trying to undeceive them. It's a parasympathetic reversal question. Well, I reverse the parasympathetic question into the answer the parasympathetic doesn't want, which disempowers it.
Yeah. And I do remember we actually had a chat about this at some stage. Didn't we talk about this? Or was that in mentorship where we talked? No, it was on a show where we looked at, what it's like, the mechanics of you talking to a client to a caller and to an entity at the same time when you talk to a program? What's the difference and all of that, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then Dale is saying, Andrew getting asked questions by JP on Wolf Spirit. Well, we love the way JP asks questions. Yes, from his state of experience, JP was asking a series of questions, which allowed me to step up particular answers because it was about how fast he could perceive the answer. And it wasn't about completely understanding. He only needed to perceive a few percentage of it so that he can catch the drift and ask the next question.
Yes, I'm familiar with that.
Right.
Yes.
And you do it, and we do it all the time in all these shows. Yeah. And then it seeds and seeds and seeds, and all of a sudden there's this whole field of plenty of information.
Yeah. And this is why it is also so important to actually afterwards transcribe it and really bring it into your cognitive experience, because it's almost like you're working with those data packages, but you don't necessarily know verbatim what's going on. You just perceive it on that celestial medium perspective, isn't it?
Yeah. I called JP, he had a lot of spiritual RAM, like in a computer has RAM, and he could process something really fast. He may not remember it 10 minutes later, but didn't matter. It still made a frequency in him.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so this is actually when you allow yourself to realize that you are not a data processing machine necessarily that is all stored and then you're just pulling it's not like that. You have so much more capacity to step into a subject matter without you knowing nothing about it.
Right. And this comes into our topic, hidden treasures. Yes. How to access those hidden treasures without being the machine.
Yes. And we always talk about the DNA instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So what is required for us to really tune and tone that instrument, that DNA instrument, so that we can actually tap into that universal language, that unified view of nature?
So the first thing is a clear mind that understands clarity. Now, it does not need to be super advanced. All of these subject matters I'm going to repeat dovetail one into another. The ability to perceive and receive a form of silence, a daily practice that makes a disciplinary difference to you, meaning you choose your own discipline level, and then the willingness to go to the edge of the unknown and experience the unknown as known without fear, false evidence appearing real, taking you down mind trails of paranoia, fear, etc. But allowing the data from the unknown to come into your sacred space and become knowingness without resistance.
So that's the trust journey beyond doubt and beyond hesitation, just jumping.
Yes.
Just jumping and see where it takes you.
As long as it's not curiosity. Because as I've said before, curiosity learning has been weaponized against us. When we enter that state where I'm going to the edge of the unknown, you are turning off an expectation journey. Because you can't be on the edge of unknownness with expectations. You will only create a long-term limitation for yourself.
You probably have an energy that you can perceive where it's going to lead or what you want to create with it, okay? But that doesn't mean that you're attached to the outcome. Absolutely. Yeah, you have no expectations. You actually have, and I don't mind using the word curiosity. You have a curious mind of exploration, what this energy can look like, when you start bringing form to it.
So I'm going to add a little subject matter here. Curiosity is not always innocence. Let's say pornography.
Oh, right.
Okay. That's not an innocent journey, is it? And there's plenty of other subject matter that are relating to violence, whatever subject matter that isn't innocent. Oh my God. Curiosity can easily lead you into something you can't unsee.
Well, what if it starts with just plain curiousness, curiosity, and then the programs take over? So that's why I'm thinking you could look at it from, say, have a perspective on what the energy feels like, as long as it feels coherent and in alignment with what you want to create, and start with a curious mind on it, and then actually be open enough to realize when it turns into something else, when you go off piste with it, and then put a stop to it.
There comes a point where curiosity ends and active learning begins. And curiosity has to end quickly for active learning to take over on a subject matter, or curiosity can change the fundamental program in you very fast.
Yeah. I think, you won't get away with curiosity learning if you want to be consistent. Mm-hmm. Because people will eventually not take you serious and walk away.
And the greater journey to understanding why curiosity has been weaponized here is to keep you in that state of curious learning and not activating the active learning stage, which is bringing more of your spirit in, turning off empathy, turning on to intuition, allowing clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience on the subject matter. So using all of your psychic stuff to practice energy.
So let's actually question the word learning itself. What if there is nothing that we have to learn? What if there is something that we have to explore and to acknowledge, to tap into, and then through the consistency of tapping into it, through determination, through the courage and everything, it becomes something that we call learning. Because I think lots of people are put off by the word learning itself.
Yeah, because they've been traumatized in their school.
Yes.
And thus, curiosity learning is not learning.
Yeah. And it's also the thing where we often, in spiritual realms and everything, we hear that, we have all the information already within us.
Yep.
So learning is probably not the best way of using it. Maybe it's better to say, how do you tap into that information and make it actually work for you? And I think this is actually part of what we're talking today, because we have all the information, all the data, all the capacities, with all the skills within us.
But we may not have the language and the language skills to accurately describe it. Yeah. And accurate description is starting at 97, 98%. Inaccurate description is anything below that. And an inaccurate description can lead us down pathways that destroy the original meaning. Therefore, we are just tongue-tied with trying to explain something.
Yes, and that already, to be honest, is an advanced level, because there are people still at the level where they don't even acknowledge that they have a body that is an amazing DNA instrument they can actually use very much beyond the capacities that they've been using now.
And when they're using that capacity, they're not drawing their core energy with that. They're using the background radio electromagnetic frequencies to tap into that. And that's how they can keep their frequencies high and keep going.
So let me actually ask you this here. Is this part of us working through algorithms rather than working beyond algorithms?
The short answer is yes. But there comes a point where the living algorithm of life transcends into the ocean of consciousness and is no longer an algorithm. It is an emanation of light in a collective of other emanations of light that are sharing a flicker frequency.
Okay, so what you've just been saying is that, we are actually not an equation. We are not just binary numbers. We are so much more than that. And I think this is also why science and, cosmology and everything, just doesn't work, because they don't look at it from a unified perspective, from a holistic perspective of who we actually are and how we're interacting with our environment on this planet and beyond.
Exactly.
So what are actually, let's go into those hidden treasures. What are those hidden treasures that we have not acknowledged yet, or some of us have not acknowledged yet?
Power of taste.
It's just because you had a sip of your coffee now.
my tea, I'm having Earl Grey. Power of taste. We have explored, as human beings in existing today, have only explored maybe 15% of our taste capacity.
Okay.
We can taste light, but we don't know how to taste light right now. Just like a kid who's never been taught to do mathematical tables, they don't need to do mathematical tables. We haven't learned the next levels of sense of taste, even though there's everything in our world. How much of our day is taste? Okay, we can taste the air, yet we don't. But 200 years ago, the people in natural living could taste the air and tell you through the taste of the air if it was going to rain that day.
Oh.
Yes, yeah. Not just that, but that's a real thing that was done by people.
Yeah. That makes me think now of those kids. They can feel when they read. They just put their hand onto the book and feel the text and the words, even though they don't even open the book, and just feel everything what's written in there, isn't it?
Okay, the other thing is our sense of smell too. Even though as humans we're limited in the ranges that we can smell compared to dogs, we have a psychic scent because the smell still goes through, the nerves still go through the rods and cones of your third eye. Think about that. The nerves that make up sense of smell still go through the third eye as parts of rods and cones. So our third eye is a combination of all of our sensing organs. And the sense of smell can very much be a super psychic sense. Like when we had you on the hot seat and we brought up the term the psychic bloodhounds. Even though I've talked about those in different shows, they made something uniquely different for you in that hot seat.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when it comes to the sense of seeing, what would you call it? Yeah. So what is that? Well, that's where remote viewing comes in, right?
Sight is still a combination of ears and nose and taste and center of gravity that allows us to have a sense of touch through our body in motion, which creates gyroscopic effects throughout our chakra systems. So our sight is intrinsically linked to the rest of our senses, and our sight can perceive touch as much as it can perceive scent and taste and hear. Like right now, are our eyes hearing?
Okay.
The answer is yes, our eyes are hearing because it's an integral part of speaking. Okay. Now, if you have a person that's been deaf their whole life and all they hear, they don't physically hear, but they can feel the vibrations of their voice, which makes up their language system. And their eyes feel the vibration as much as their nose and their tongue and the rest of their body.
Yeah. So, as I said, that also links up with another hidden treasure that we have the capacity, obviously, of remote viewing.
Well, let's break down to remote viewing to remote viewing versus remote experiencing. And we'll go remote viewing, like empathy, is the lowest scale of observational skill sets.
Remote viewing.
Yes, the way that remote viewing is described by Ed Dames and the people that originally brought it out. Because there's many different modalities of remote viewing, just like Reiki. There's people that come up, with their version of Reiki and come up with a name with it. And there's 10,000 different versions of Reiki, even though Reiki started in the early 1900s by one guy, okay? Who then passed it down in a lineage. And now there's thousands of people who call their version of Reiki. And the same thing exists with remote viewing. And some are advanced and some are super simplistic. But we'll simply look at remote viewing as a state of perception expression is the lower levels of psychic expression. Clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience are all much higher experiences that you may have in the remote viewing session, but it does not make up the totality of the remote viewing versus jumping right into clairaudience, clairsentience, so on and so forth.
Okay. So I've been looking at. I watched a documentary with Uri Geller.
Wonderful individual. Who remembers? Anyone in the chat room remembers Uri Geller?
Yeah, what a cool dude. I've never, the only thing I knew about him was obviously he was able to bend spoons, right?
Mm-hmm.
But watching that documentary made me realize that he was not just a magician, he was a true magician, not one of those stage magicians. He was actually amazing, using all those hidden treasures, those hidden capacities. Now, he was a huge remote viewer.
He was clairvoyant, not a remote viewer.
Okay, so that's a definition thing then. So what's up? Oh, yeah, what a dude. I love him.
He was hired by the oil and gas industry, by all sorts of major corporations to discover stuff, and he did it, and he made boatloads of money helping them find natural resources all over the world.
He was he was talking about dowsing. He was dowsing. That's what he said. But he didn't use any rods or any instruments, just his hands. And basically, he was flying. He was explaining. He was flying over over some area, basically looking at the map, and then just through his capacities finding the place where there was oil, and then he just marked it. And the oil industries, just basically went there, started exploring. He got his $1 million and whatever other, little extra for that. And he used to find gold in the mines, working with the Mexicans, and just amazing. Of course,
that was a person that was operating in an era where there was far less restrictions on psychic skills. The mid 70s to late 80s, and even into the 90s before he kind of faded out, even though he's still relevant. He's just been around a really, really long time. And part of what he did was allow people to accept that anyone could have a psychic skill, and that it could become used in professional business. Now, American, European professional businesses don't allow psychic skill sets in. But the second you travel to China, every major business meeting in which any contracts are sold are talked about or signed, or any major business meetings, there's your CEOs and their people that flank them, and then the other person who's dressed very differently, who is the company hired psychic. Quite literally, the company out there, and they're all freelance psychics that are hired by companies because of the type of skill sets they have to understand the negotiating patterns of the person in front of them from a psychic perspective. There is not a single contract in Hong Kong or China that isn't signed without the psychic approval.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe there are many more, people with psychic abilities used all over the world for all different arenas, instead of AIs.
That's right. And in China, that's an age-old journey, thousands of years older. Every contract has a psychic oversight. And let's say there could be 3 sides. Each side has their own psychic.
Yeah.
Their own person.
He was working for the Americans. He was working for the CIA.
Yeah.
He was working he signed, I can't remember now what he signed, some sort of treaty and stuff, where he was there, and I think it got to a stage where they wanted to use him against, for nuclear weapons and stuff like that. And then apparently he said no, or maybe that was just part of his story. But so let's just talk about the mechanics. What made Uri Geller different to any of us?
Spiritual contracts in a modern age of modern media. He was the first psychic superstar since the Elizabethan era mystics.
Mm-hmm. So what about his little story? He had a story that at the age of 5, he was hit by an orb, by a laser beam coming from an orb in the field. And after that, he started developing, bending the spoons and stuff.
Yeah, he was activated. Absolutely activated.
That was an activation, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Just
And
like when I was at the baseball stadium, that was my galactivation.
yeah, like that.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because, I mean, he didn't have for many years, he didn't have confirmation on that, but he just trusted that. And he started playing around, and it was everything he did in the beginning was fun. So it wasn't like, oh my God, I can do this and now I'm going to go out there and make money with it. It wasn't that like that. It was that trust, that journey of no hesitation, no doubt, that then started aligning all those synchronicities for him.
Well, those synchronicities were pre-aligned through the fetus and the blueprint to make him highly exposed to millions of households worldwide.
Yeah.
And it's fair to say in an ancient time, he was a highly notable personality that had many lifetimes of great notability for whatever the subject matter he was doing. Therefore, his energy or essence was easily recognizable, which allowed for grand spiritual contrasts of recognition through media. And the subject matter he did inspired millions of people to go and look at the esoteric journey and the spirituality and the psychic journey.
And also, he did not stop because, yes, it was easier then, but it was also more difficult on a different level because it was very controversial at the time, and he had lots of naysayers too, who made him.
Yeah, the level of controversy he came out, meaning he was the first one to break the glass ceiling of what a psychic could do with forever attacks against him.
Yeah.
And no matter how strong the attacks got, he got stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until he was ready to not be in the public eye the way he was before. And as he left the public eye, the attackers still continued, but they didn't sully his name. They just made him more popular enough to jump generations.
Yeah. So we're using this example to just illustrate what the capacities are actually. And yes, you were saying it has something to do with our contracts, spiritual contracts. So, but we innately do have capacities along those lines. And if you resonate with it, then I think that is a trigger and some sort of indication that you have those too, right? At least
Absolutely.
to a similar or sort of level.
Anyone can do what I can do. It requires discipline and courage, which are not mystical.
Well, and I remember him actually saying that too. He said, look, it's practice.
It's just like practice.
To the gym. If you want muscles, you got to fucking practice. And
right.
That's it too. Yeah.
Okay, I have 9 years of practice on air, but I had 20 years before that of private practice, even though I had clients and stuff, very different than what I do now. Yeah. I have evolved in the way that I do things, and every evolution I have realized has been a part of the fundamental who's the presenter today. Because I can go back to some of my notebooks from 2000, 2001 and see all the basics of all the teachings I talk about today, just written in a different way.
Yeah. So let's talk some more along those lines before we talk about other treasures in the earth and stuff, because so that was telepathy, clairvoyant, clairsentient, and all of that. There's telekinesis, obviously he was working with that, moving the object. And again, I would almost say, I mean, I haven't practiced it but I think if I would start practicing that, God knows how long it would take, I could do that. I think we could all do that.
I don't.
Why?
The amount of energy that it takes to move something telekinetically, even just a little bit of a shake, in most people's more psychic energy than they can produce in a year, because they operate on microvolts. For telekinesis to work, you need to be plugged into the macrovolt and then the macrovolt above that without competition, so that you can tap into an energy source even higher than you that's not in competition, but is in the agenda that is not instantly gratifying moving something. And that's the journey of why so many people try telekinesis and then they don't get nothing at all. And then they get frustrated and pissed off at the fact that they didn't get a manifestation.
Yeah.
The mental no in telekinesis.
I think it's like, if you want to try that, and that's why I probably never tried, because I don't think I'm naturally, it would take a lot of effort if ever. But if you do feel that you are very much resonate with that, then you should try, right? You should practice and see what happens. I mean, he
So
would.
is it a good idea to practice getting punched in the face?
Well, you mean the object flying into your face?
No, when we are trying to move something, we are manifesting our aura to go,
Right.
and we are doing damage to ourselves.
Okay.
Quite literally. We are moving energy faster than we have the capacity to do it.
So that's a little bit, well, I do remember where you actually advise people against shape shifting too, because it does take a lot of energy, doesn't it?
And it's very destructive when you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we're basically saying is the capacities are there, the practice would have to be put into, but you have to be aware of the ramifications.
As well as the fundamentals of what it takes to get to those higher states and skill sets. Like telekinesis requires a long-term macrovolt connection and a connection to the next macrovolts above that.
Yeah. So where does alchemy come in to all of that?
So alchemy allows us to have some shortcuts into giving us energy to do things that have the next state in a chemical formula or alchemical formula that allows the many different states of beingness to be in the chemical and spiritual makeup to actually make a manifestation. So alchemy is not necessarily the shortcut. Well, I'll call it a shortcut, but it really isn't. It's a way of experiencing some of those higher skill sets as an experience, and then a knowingness later that you cannot continue to use alchemy. You have to reach that higher state without the alchemy to do that at will.
Right. So would you say the interaction between the DNA instrument and the environment, though, is a form of alchemy, right?
Yes.
Lower level of alchemical creation. As we are interacting, we are evolving, we are growing, we're changing our molecular structure.
Absolutely, yep.
Talking about molecular structure, because he was actually, Uri Geller was actually saying in that documentary that he bilocated as well from a New York apartment, I think 35 miles away, just like that. But again, keep in mind that was obviously, this guy obviously had very much specific spiritual contracts for all of that.
But he also practiced some of those things.
Oh, yeah.
And bilocation in general is not an uncommon, so it's pretty common. People do it all the time and just don't realize they're doing it. And there are certain energy speed bumps in our environment that kick us out of our body and force us to bilocate.
Okay.
You've ever been in the parking lot and going too fast and you see that speed bump at the last second and you put on the brakes, but you still know you hit it too hard and there's a thump, 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 thump?
Yeah.
That can kick you out of your energy frequency and force you to bilocate. Meaning you're behind the speed bump and you're suddenly in front of the speed bump and you skip going over it.
Okay, so this is a great example to actually really illustrate how you can bend time and space.
Yes.
Big time. And you can play with that. Yeah. You know, because this is a form of bilocation. So we don't have to think of, I'm bilocating now over into your studio and we're doing the show together. That's not what we're talking about, you know. It's actually, it's so good you mentioned that, because we often get sidetracked and think, oh, Uri can do it, I can. But that's already a form of bilocation.
Right. We skip ahead and then our part of that's bilocated behind the speed bump becomes part of us and we never hit that speed bump. Now, energetic speed bumps naturally occur everywhere around this planet, but the negatives of our world have figured out how to make them oversized speed bumps. You ever been in a car park and you see a speed bump that's like giant for some whatever reason compared to all the other speed bumps you've ever seen?
Yeah, I hate speed bumps.
Right. No matter how fast you're gonna car's gonna have a significant situation where curb bumps. Exactly. Thank you, Alan. Exactly. Curb bumps. Okay, no matter how slow you are, it's still a major up-down motion. And whoever put it in there is a dick.
They are, because we've got a road around the corner here, and they've put speed bumps and narrowed the road and everything. And you know what? So many accidents have happened there since they've done it. And also, there's a hospital just down the corner, down the road. So it slows everything down.
Mm-hmm.
Do we really need to be even more slowed down than they already slow us down?
No, but
Exactly.
right. But in this energetic framework we're talking about, if you're, say you're walking in a mall at Christmas time, the negative energies want to set up an energy speed bump every 5 to 10 steps. Why? Because they're there to harvest your energy. They're not there to pick your pocket.
So give us an example of a negative energy speed bump that is obviously different to the real speed bump that we all know outside on the roads.
So I will use the Christmas mall energy as my metaphor. Every time you walk into a store, there's a speed bump. Wherever you see a sign that says save 70%, there's a speed bump there.
Yes.
Okay? For what reason? To energetically slow you down and pay attention to the stuff there.
Yeah.
Now, let's say you're outside the mall and there are no parking lots, or there are no parking spaces left. Even though there may not be physical speed bumps, there are speed bumps everywhere that have been set up by human beings naturally looking for parking spaces. You ever be the person that just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning around the parking lot for 10 or 15 minutes until they find it? They're leaving sparse speed bumps everywhere for everyone else.
Yeah. I suppose every light pole would be a speed bump, right? The transformers or whatever you call those things in the light bulbs that are affecting our pineal gland and crystallizing, on all of that. So, yeah.
And George Morgan is saying big boobies on a billboard is a speed bump ad? Yes, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever catches your mind, there's an energetic speed bump there.
But I think women have been abused over centuries, over millennia, to be used as speed bumps for that, right?
Absolutely. Because if a man's phallus was on a giant screen over the last 100 years, it would be a different form of a speed bump.
It would be, yes.
It would be an erect bump. Wah, 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 wah.
Absolutely.
And then all the conversations that could go beyond, the fixating on women to the fixating on men. Yes, it would be a very different form of advertising, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
If we were truly a matriarchal society that, let's just say, mystified the phallus over the breast.
That will be a topic for a different show.
But so it's its own treasure. It's its own treasure.
Its own treasure, yeah.
Okay.
But you trashed it now. You trashed the treasures we want to talk about, right?
Thank you, Kathleen. Phallic symbols are also everywhere, but they're not objectified as in our modern society, which is the giant difference. In the past, male domination through phallic symbols was very different than the objectifying of the woman's body through advertisement.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
let's go back.
Cut or uncut. Ha ha. Uncut. Oh, natural.
Absolutely. So treasures.
What is a treasure?
What is a treasure?
Mm-hmm.
What is a treasure? A treasure is something that is precious to you, that can create, or to anyone, that can actually catalyze you into growth and evolution.
Mm-hmm. And
it's pleasure. It can give you pleasure. It can make you joyful.
Mm-hmm. It can make you wealthy.
It can make you wealthy.
A treasure can be cursed.
Yes.
Plenty of Spanish galleon cursed treasure out there.
But it can also make you realize that you're so much more than you thought you are.
It can lead you into that generation of thought. Yes, absolutely.
So, for instance, we were talking about the antiques at some stage, didn't we? We did a show a little bit where we chatted a little bit about antiques, and me being an avid, car booter and going to markets and everything, and I often have a bit of an idea of what type of energy I want to attract, and what sometimes I go specifically for certain objects, and I can actually, as I do this through practice, because I do this quite a lot, I can start attracting those pieces to me. Not specifically. There was a time I was looking for an Italian ceramic. Can't remember now the name. That blue ceramic, really beautiful. And there was a period of time, maybe it was over the year, where I found so many of those pieces.
Right, because the people were retiring and going to nursing homes. That's why that generation of collectors were going to nursing homes.
Well, I'll give you that. That's fine.
But you attracted it out of putting it into your field of being a collector of that treasure.
Exactly. So there is a hidden treasure within me, then I can do that. Be this the power of the will, or be this now, I don't know what that is, but there is a certain resonance through this, and we all have that.
Right. And we all have that capacity to attract it to us too.
Exactly.
Okay. And once we start that attracting process, we are putting out into the field the attraction factor to that energy. Okay.
And that goes with everything. It doesn't just go with ceramics. It goes with everything. This is that law of attraction on some level, but also, again, it requires you to acknowledge it first, that you can do that. So the whole message here is, stop making yourself small, and really acknowledge that amazing capacity that your DNA instrument has.
The ability to attract whatever it needs to its reality.
Yes. So what other types of treasures, when we talk about the earth now, let's talk about the earth and anything specific treasures that interact with us that we probably haven't really acknowledged yet. I mean, let's talk about water. Water is a treasure. Not just because we are 70% or 80%, but because it has that amazing capacity of shape-shifting, right? Into ice, into rain, into liquid, into all of that.
So it's fair to say any element can be a treasure. Does rarity make something a treasure? In some situations, rarity is a treasure. But there are other situations in which rarity does not necessarily make it a treasure. It's collectability. What it's being used for.
I think the rarity business is the manipulation of the treasure to monetize it. I mean, look, we've got water in surplus. We've got gold in surplus on this earth. But yet we are manipulated into thinking that it's rare and it's not enough, so that we're all buying into the Babylonian money system.
But that is a valuation system that isn't necessarily used as rating. It's commodity based. And then each commodity has their own niche industry that supports it, where the Babylonian money magic system is an aspect of each of the niche that takes a portion of the profits from each different level, which makes the final product so much more expensive.
Yes.
Like gold should not be over $800 an ounce. It should be really at $600 an ounce. Why? Because it's that plentiful. It's everywhere. In the ancient past, like right now, I think it's less than 6% of all world gold is used for jewelry. Think about that. Less than 6% is used for jewelry or adornment, etc. The rest is all industrial usages.
And it's ridiculous, because I can again, going to the markets, there was a time a couple of years ago where it was easy to find some gold and silver, and it was reasonably
right, but it was
now,
plated. It was 18 karat or 12 karat plated.
not necessarily. Yeah, not just. You find all sorts of stuff,
Right.
when you are good.
When you're searching, I know I had that journey with my mother too, where there was a 4 or 5 year period where twice a month we would go out and go antique shopping. Okay, why? It was what I did to have fun, and I enjoyed doing it too. And I brought plenty of friends with me. And some of these antique shops we went to are 20, 30,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Huge. It could take you a half a day to go through everything, or go through all of them. And some of them had a little restaurant built inside of them. Okay.
Yeah.
You can spend a whole day. You can spend a whole day in them. Yeah.
Very smart. Well, what I'm saying is that this lack thinking and the projection of the lack is so ingrained still in society, because you can see it on the, just by, as an example here, nobody's selling their jewelry at the moment because everybody's holding on to it, thinking it's nothing, there is none out there. We have a silver and gold shortage, right?
There is no silver and gold shortage. This actually isn't. There
I
isn't
know.
this. The irony is people are creating situations because they see the price of silver and gold going up and thinking they're going to sell it. Guess what? You're not going to be able to take a punk off of a gold bar and buy groceries with it. Our world isn't set up like that. You just can't take a nail clipper and get a little piece of gold off, measure it, and it's worth that much. That's why so many people who buy gold and never actually have it in their physical possession, they just have digital paper records. It means nothing if there's ever really a breakdown in society. How are you going to smelt that gold into something that's equivalent to 9 pieces of bread? You can't.
Well, you can buy gold coins and bars. You actually get gold bars. You can buy those.
But
and then keep
what are they using the gold for? If once you take it out of a coin surplus, there are limited finite amount of coins that aren't going to be reproduced. So let's say we're in an end of the world situation and you've got 500 gold coins. What are you buying with a gold coin? A computer? No. Electricity?
End of the world? Maybe a couple of pigs? Oh no, I might be raw vegan by then. I don't know, vegetables.
And then you're out of gold and what?
No. I appreciate what you're saying, but this is just an illustration for the manipulation of those rare. It is not even rare, but I mean, how many rare metals out there we haven't even heard about yet, right? Yeah. And that's where those treasures come in from the earth. And then, of course, we're talking about the treasures that are outside the earth, all these rare metals and elements and stuff.
So in the end of the world scenario, when there's no industry, there's no value to those metals.
Yes.
Because less than a few percent of it is used for jewelry. And at that point, are people going to start wearing gaudy giant gold necklaces? I would hope so, because that was the point of gold, to cover your walls in it, left, right, up and down, like the Mayans, the Aztecs, and the Incans did. Half-inch thick, all throughout your entire house.
Exactly. So I was wondering, let's something totally different. What about volcanoes?
Ooh.
What about, because there's an intensity to that, isn't there? There must be a lot of.
When Mount St. Helens went off, it was equivalent to, I believe, 400 Hiroshimas. That's how much power was behind it, 400 or 500 Hiroshimas. And it put in, I think, 1 trillion or 2 trillion cubic acres of dust into the air. That's gigantic. Now, the energy that's produced in a volcano is easily harvestable by off-worlder technology. So wherever there is a volcano, there is an major energy harvesting system. Major. Inside the cloud, the pyroclastic cloud, which is super destructive to the living things, is pure static electricity and lightning-based electricity. So Robert has sent me 1,600 times the size of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. That's how giant it was. Now, that was Mount St. Helens. Before that, in the 1860s, there was Krakatoa, which is the loudest volcano ever expression, meaning the entire the explosion of the sound was heard entirely around the world. Everyone around the world heard the explosion of Krakatoa. Okay.
So carry on, yeah.
So that journey into mega explosion is pure energy. And pure energy is one of those things that attracts people to live near these volcanoes. Okay. And then when the volcano settles, it creates lava tubes that have access to the deep underground sites.
So how are those energies being harvested? Are they just being harvested by the off-worlders? So let's say there is an eruption. Who is going to harvest the energy? Who harvests it?
Ships go inside the pyroclastic cloud or just outside the pyroclastic card and wait for them to get hit by static walls and frequencies, and they just absorb it pure into their vessels.
And that happens
all the time, every day. Wherever there's a volcano, there's a UFO there. And if you just type earthquakes with UFOs, you're going to find dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of videos showing UFOs entering and leaving the clouds. And in some situations, it looks like they're actually shooting beams of energy into the volcano.
So would they also create those eruptions in order to harvest? Are those natural ones, or?
If you pat a baby on the back to get it to burp, is that helping it to burp, or is it just giving it the comfort to burp?
Right.
That's what they're doing. They're patting the volcanic baby on the back. Okay. They're not really laser manipulating it to go off. Can they do that? Absolutely. They have the technology to do that. But it's more like tapping the baby on the back to get it to burp.
Right. So you were saying something like people live around those volcanoes because of the energies. That would be an unawareness on their side, right?
An unawareness, yes. The spiritual contract to be born next to a volcano so that they begin to experience regular spikes in super high frequency, super high releases. Some may not be positive to their energy bodies. Some may be positive, some may be very negative to their energy bodies, which then exposes them to that exact frequency. Example, there are many people who live next to a volcano their entire life and it doesn't go off, and suddenly a 92-year-old guy, here comes the lava flow and he's dead.
Yeah.
Okay? That happens all the time.
It obviously comes with those dangers at the same time. So would you say, when we talk about volcanoes, what about floods? Floods similar to that?
It depends on how the flood is created. If it's from heavy raining, you are still creating energy, but the energy is not classic electromagnetic lightning based. The water, as it's moving, is stripping electrons from the surface and trying to put it into the front of the flow, which then is creating this static water grounded base electrical motion, keeping the flood moving faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. Now, let's say you have a dam break where there's just water being held back. That is pressure creating rapid flow down an environment that's already designed to hold that flow, like a river in front of it that the dam breaks. And a variety of other situations versus tidal energy, which is constantly bashing up against a shore, or you're having a hurricane where the winds are at 100 miles and pushing the water inland. And then tsunamis are a rapid release of electromagnetic energy that charges the water. Like when you throw a pebble in the pond, you constantly see the waves going back and forth to continue that wave action.
So, we're talking about treasures here. Those are treasures. We only look, and this is where everything has a shadow side. Yes, right. It comes with people losing their lives and everything, but at the same time, these occurrences have another side to it.
Wisdom.
wisdom. And
Yes.
I think, and also, isn't it, with the floods and with the tsunamis or anything, the volcanoes, same thing. What happens on the unseen side too? So often these occurrences are so useful in terms of clearing entities, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of times you have, like, whenever you have floods, it's very detrimental to the negative entities that are out there. Okay. And they get swept away in the flood, quite literally.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then when the cities, are empty, like when New Orleans was empty after the great hurricane, that was considered in the etheric world like a massive purging of 5 centuries of ghosts.
Yeah.
Literally. The city is not energetically the same. So much of the fundamental ghosts, good and bad, were completely lost because afterwards they had nothing to feed on.
Yeah.
Okay, or nothing to support them. Let's say there are many ghost communities that figure out how to harvest the land instead of people.
Yeah. And I think all of that is just to go back to the universal language of nature, and the unified view, to the holistic view. So this is where, when we go into fractalization and separation and create all these different boxes, we're no longer seeing the bigger picture of the treasures.
Because one man's treasure is another man's trash.
Yes.
Okay, how often have you been at the car boot or the yard sale and suddenly you see something that captures your eye and it's instantly a treasure, but the 400 people who went in front of it saw it as trash?
Absolutely. And that's why, you often, you go, and sometimes, I'm late and, not one of the first ones, but you always know certain things are waiting for you, because nobody else will acknowledge it as dear to them.
Exactly. Now, I want to make a little background reference to like history. When I was much younger, my oldest brother, Nick, after he graduated, got out of the Navy, he got a federal firearms license, which meant he could buy and sell guns and over state lines, and he had to have breakers and everything. But what ended up happening is I could go to a gun show and look at the entire list of guns and everything that everyone was selling, call him up, and then he'd come with cash and we'd buy 10, 20, 50 guns and then resell them. This was before there was an internet. Okay. I began to find old guns from the 1800s, and even from the 1700s, that were still functional. And I learned to find unique treasures. Okay. Like finding a Colt in 1867 Colt Walker or any of those other guns and buying it for $300 and turn around and selling it for $7,000. Okay. And there are plenty of people that do that with antiques. People are asking Gunrunner. In all reality, in the 5.5 years we did it, I could have easily bought 2,000 guns and sold that many. Majority of them being antiques.
Yeah.
I would go to estate sales. I would look at the estate sale because they were like, is it somebody that died, was in World War II? Good chance they had some kind of guns from World War II.
That makes me think of all the shot down planes and UFOs, in obviously a couple of 1,000 years ago, where on an off-world level, there are also people, because I remember you said to me once that I was one of those. I was collecting those bits and pieces that were used in the galactic commerce market, because that trade thing, that treasure thing, is not just happening on this planet.
It's everywhere. I have always said that the Earth's solar system is the Galactic Antiques Roadshow.
Yeah,
there are antiques from every society and every species for the last 40 million years hidden all over our solar system.
And there are different species that actually specialize in that, right?
Yeah, antique hunters. Yes.
Those are the amoebas, aren't they? Yes.
The amoebas are one of them, yes.
And they obviously they're going etherically through different realities. They actually start, they're not just staying in their own little bubble of reality. They go to all different types of realities and pick up stuff.
Yes, when I was antique hunting and gun hunting, I saw more off-world beings at gun shows and antique shows than I saw in public.
Yeah.
Clearly, you are not a human. You are wearing a human suit, but it isn't real.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah, somebody's saying galactic eBay.
eBay.
Yes, there's a big galactic eBay going on over here.
Absolutely, galactic eBay. Well, it's going to be difficult to get a receipt for your stuff, but at times
you get an etheric receipt.
An etheric receipt, yes.
Yep.
See how that holds up with HMRC.
Now, there was other situations. So people are asking me to tell more about the guns. Again, I was looking for antique guns. Even though we had a fully licensed federal firearms license, meaning I could buy any gun that was without the restrictions and allowed us to immediately resell it. I was looking for guns that had historical value to them. Like I can't tell you how many Civil War guns that were signed by this general, this captain, and I would go into the records and find out if this was a real person or not. Okay. I mean, somebody actually used this gun in the Battle of Antietam. Somebody used this weapon in a World War II scenario. They were in an actual historical person I could track and find. So did these things attract me? Absolutely. They attracted me to them because they wanted a new owner for history's sake.
So that was a spiritual contract as well, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So so you owning that, taking that over from a different owner, how does that change reality then? How does it change history?
I'm a temporary holder till the new owner is in potential. I'm just a holding house. I was just the transfer house in which the history can go to somebody else who will use it for a different purpose.
Yes, and by you holding it temporarily through your consciousness, that would obviously impact on the imprinting of the gun.
Absolutely.
So would you neutralize? Would you do anything with it, or automatically? Would you consciously do some clearing on it, or not?
There were many haunted guns. Yes, many haunted guns, and then there were guns that had a consciousness in them, a remnants of a consciousness that was there for historical sake. That whoever would covet or put it in a collector's series, that collector has a unique set of spiritual contracts. And so I was buying for collectors. And then most of the guns I didn't hold on for longer than a couple months. They would instantly be resold, or we'd go to auctions and put up 20, 30, 40 at a time. And yes, when my parents first found out about this, like, what the hell are you doing sending a 16-year-old kid to buy guns? Okay. I got my license and an 88 Ford Escort, and I would drive 4 or 5 hours and go to every weekend or every other weekend, 3 to 4 gun shows. And then my other brothers would go to other gun shows in other places and then figure out what was the best to buy that weekend or that month.
Fantastic.
Right.
Fantastic.
And a lot of times, I had enough cash on me to put it on hold to take it off the table. And then they'd come. We weren't buying AKs or anything like that. Every now and then we would get a bunch of stuff like that and then immediately resell that to actual gun stores before they were illegal. Okay, before the big gun laws came in and changed everything. This was 1988 to 1991.
Did you ever do a license?
My brother had the license. My oldest brother had the license, which allowed me to be the scout.
The scout, yeah. The
scout. Even though the way the gun shows work, anybody can buy a gun at a gun show without a background check. You could individually buy a gun from a person. But once we had the license, that allowed us to sell cross-state. That's what that license allowed. And it meant we paid all our taxes and everything on it. We did it completely legal, had a corporation for it and everything. And then I get a percentage of everything that was sold, which paid my
Did
way
some
through which paid my way through college.
did some of those guns go to museums too?
No doubt, no doubt. I would say at least 50 pieces are in museums now, or a collector's museum. Yes, yes.
But you see, this is what really turns me on with those treasures. You actually unearthing them, you find them, you're giving them a different lease on their life, and you actually opening them up, like especially when they go into a museum, for people to come and to pick up that energy and to work with that energy and to learn about them, and stuff like that.
So after a while of doing this, I kind of got a little bit of notoriety in the Northeast Ohio collectors circle, and you'd get invited to go to different places. And I watched a guy buy a tank one day, a World War II Sherman tank from a guy's backyard that had been sitting there for 40 years, 50 years.
Yeah.
Okay? Just a giant rust bucket, but $1 million later, it was fully functional.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Okay.
I love that type of recycling. It's so powerful,
And then there's the modern guns. Like there's this gun, it's called the USAS 12. It's a fully automatic shotgun, and it generally has a 50-round drum magazine in it. And in about 6 seconds, you can unload all of the 12-gauge rounds, which is highly, highly, highly devastating gun. Now, it's called gas recoiled, so there's virtually no kick on the gun whatsoever, versus a shotgun that has a gigantic kick. Now, when this gun came out, 6 months later, it was banned in the U.S. markets, but there were about 8,000 that were sold on the United States market before the ban came in. And this gun you could buy for like $800, and as soon as the ban went into place, it was worth about $10,000.
Oh wow!
Nice. Right. And in some situations more, because it went to most of the movie theaters were the big collectors of them, because they had a Class 3 federal firearms license that allowed them to have more destructive weapons, but under a movie studio license.
Fantastic.
Ammo was very easy to find. It was a standard 12-gauge round ammo. Ammo was everywhere, quite literally. Okay. And then there are
ammunition.
Ammunition is cheap. That stuff was cheap. And then there are other guns that were basically something that looks like the American M16, except it's the super high-end Porsche version where it's titanium steel, 7-twist barrel, super scope on it, and the gun retails at like $4,000. This would be in the early 90s, or retailed for like $2,000, but now still worth around $7,000 or $8,000. And there are many guns from World War II, which 5 to 8 years ago you could have bought for $200 that are now worth well over $10,000.
Yeah.
And that's the collector's market. And people don't shoot these guns. They're pure collector's items.
So what's actually the mechanics of being a collector? Why is it so attractive to some and not to others? Like, I'm a collector. I love it. For me, it gives me that feeling of, probably because I'm a bit of a time traveler, isn't it? In knowing this. And then my partner is like, what the hell? He doesn't want any of that. He's not interested in any of that.
So collecting in general is a passionate hobby in which when you go to collect, there's an enthusiasm for the search.
Yeah, it's a
and
search.
Then when the search is completed, there's a clear dopamine release that keeps us searching more. And that journey for the search is just as important as finding something. Okay? Some people collect all sorts of stuff, from Cabbage Patch Kids to Star Wars to this to that. The modern internet world, 15 years ago, stamps had a value to them. Today, they have no value, because it used to be the rarity of connecting somebody from Europe to somebody in South Africa to connect someone in America who would buy this uniquely rare stamp. But once the internet came on, we realized these stamps were literally everywhere. So
Yeah.
right now, everyone that thinks your stamp collection is worth anything, it's absolutely worthless. It has
Yeah.
only got a museum quality, which isn't going to be valuable for cash. And the same thing goes with so much of the collectibles that you think from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, which 10 years ago, 12 years ago, maybe still had a higher value to them, but they have virtual no value today, unless it's super rare.
Yeah. So what actually, you see, sometimes I think it's this demand, supply and demand, this is often, oh, by the way, can I say something completely off piste now? I want to thank anyone who liked Milo's TikTok movie, because we're up to over 26,000 likes. I just want to say that. So thank you very much. And now I don't know what else I was going to say. Sorry. It killed the weaponized energy now. A weaponized your weapon discussion.
So we were talking about the nature of collecting, and collecting comes in every particular format. Everyone has their own genre of what they want to collect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the manipulation, what makes something collectible right now compared to, you were talking about this, stuff that was collectible, I don't know, a year ago, no longer is. So where does that come from? Who creates that?
Who creates the collectible market?
Yeah.
The collectors, who then naturally evolved into dealers and sellers.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, what's behind that all of a sudden, everyone is looking for silver. Oh, this is probably because the bubble has got so small now, and everyone knows the price is going up and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's just an illusion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you going to get a silver cup that's maybe an ounce of silver in it from the 1880s? The 1880 value is more valuable than the amount of silver that's in it. That's the other side of collecting. Even though it may have this many ounces of silver in it, it's worth way more than that as a cup from the 1880s.
So that makes me think of another thing, is like a silver cup, the treasure of silver itself, not just the monetary value now, let's forget about that, but the treasure, what silver actually as an element adds to. Would you say that drinking from a silver cup is actually healthier for the body?
100%. What does silver do? Antiviral, antibacterial, kills living organisms. It is why the majority of the upper crust and middle crust people had silverware, silver cups. It was a way to stop the poison that was everywhere. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah. Gold cup, I would say, is the same.
That's why colloidal silver has been an ancient recipe, because they'd add the colloidal silver to their water, to their distilled or their water, to help purify it.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to the elements, there are such values to the elements that we haven't even started to explore.
Mm-hmm. Like I was saying earlier, gold is not meant to be used in the commodity situation we have now. It should be on your wall like plaster. And there's that much gold. Everyone's house can be covered in a half-inch of gold, top, bottom, floor, everything, with carpet above it. And it would be far more effective than the way we are using it now.
Yeah.
Same thing with silver and copper. When you combine copper, silver, and gold, you create what's called the sacred circuit.
So next time you think of, painting your wall, just forget the paint, just get a gold layer on it. All right.
Yes, exactly. That's why I was telling you the other day, if I had 1 ton, 2,000 pounds of gold, I would coat a room in it, top, bottom, left, right, half-inch thick. And if I get a bigger room, the bigger room. I wouldn't go less than a half-inch thick. Okay, that's like having a half-inch drywall that completes your wall. Imagine if your wall was a half-inch thick piece of gold, one giant sheet of gold.
Exactly.
So how about we take some calls, Martina?
I think so. Yeah, I think we're ready for some calls.
So let's have people go down to the participants button, click the raise your hand, and then we are going to take some questions. Robert, if you are listening on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Twitch, Periscope, or anywhere else and want to be a part of the call-in features, you must be in the Zoom room. So Robert has all of the information that is up there. So Robert, let's spin up the wheel of callers and see who wants to have a conversation with us.
All right, great talk this morning. Shri Raj Kambli.
Shri Raj, are you there? Hello?
Signal to unmute.
Going once. Going twice. Not there. All right, let's move on to the next caller, Robert.
Okay, Tina Simone.
Tina Simone, are you there?
I am.
Hi. Where are you calling from today?
Jamaica.
Welcome to the show, Jamaica. What did you want to talk about today?
Well, it's my second time on the show, so forgive me if I'm not asking an appropriate question. But two things, really. I feel very activated. There have been a lot of storms around us or being formed around Jamaica, and I felt like I had an anxiety response to it. Yes, there's some PTSD and all of that, but it felt more. But I felt actually activated, like from a DNA level. So if you had some insight about that, I'll be grateful to hear what it is.
Well, Jamaica as an island itself is surrounded by coral reefs on top of a giant mountain of crystal already.
Yes, I feel the crystal underneath us. Yes.
And then that crystal, whenever it goes under pressure, creates larger piezoelectric effects. And when a hurricane comes towards Jamaica, which has mountains on it, the piezoelectric effect of the actual entire island is increased 200 to 300 fold. Meaning anything that lives on it suddenly has all this more piezoelectric field moving through it. That means the background electromagnetic radiation or Schumann resonance is highly increased in your local environment. And then the hurricane itself has low pressure, meaning that low pressure is affecting you as a physical body, which is then going to force more electricity to go through your natural aura, which can create this anxiety effect because you don't know what to do with the energy.
Yes.
In the past, the practitioners on Jamaica were master weather manipulators who could harvest the energy and do massive magical rituals to help heal the land, make crops grow the next year, heal people that were harmed, or redirect the energy back into the storm so that it could balance the next year's crop harvest, etc.
That's interesting because when I was trying to ground the energy and really get in touch with what my body or what I was responding to, I was hearing, "You are the storm."
Yes,
and then I was like, "What?"
You are the storm. Yeah, you are the storm. Yeah.
And then myself and my family, we were like, okay, there's a lot of death and destruction, and yeah, sure, we have not been living in harmony with nature, and so when we are in her way, when she needs to cleanse, that happens. But we sat down and we said, okay, we need this to move off land, not to say that Mother Nature wouldn't do what she has to do. And we sat in a circle, my husband and my daughter, and we asked the elements to shift the clouds. And I had the radar image before our 15 minutes talk with nature, and we were amazed, I guess, to see that all of the clouds shifted. So I guess that's what I mean. Like right now, I feel so like I'm on a different plane and just trying to, or there's a level of awareness that I wasn't in touch with before. And so it's there, and it's more like, where is it coming from? What to do about it now? Because I definitely have all intentions to have it to have it a meaningful to be meaningful with it and be aligned with it. And so
Absolutely.
It's just finding my space.
And in that journey of being meaningful alignment, you learn new ways of interacting with it. Where instead of moving the storm, you can add your energy to the storm so it balances karma. Every drop of rain and every gust of wind is a balancing of energetic karma. And you can bring your blessings of purity to that storm too.
Mm.
Okay.
I'm going to definitely play with that, but it's really a lot. And so I think I guess I had to cleanse fear within my body space. So that was part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it brought it to the surface.
That's what I call a wind colonic.
Dude, it was more than a colonic. It was,
Yeah.
oh Jesus.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. And if I may, in all of this storm and trying to find find my space in the eye, find myself in the eye, I am getting a lot of, well, let me just say, there is this being that wants to come in the middle of all of this, incarnate. I'm very in touch with him or them. And it has been a karmic journey for me and my husband. And so with all of this happening, I'm like, now you want to come?
It's the perfect time. It's the perfect time. The storm is like the great egg that's allowing it to hatch, because the veil of reality is very thin when the storm moves through.
But we want him to come. I just want to know if I guess if they're here, because using conventional medicine to really what's going on with my body, that has never been the case. I feel that from I was born that I had to direct the doctors to say, no, that's not what's happening. This is what's happening. And in this case, there, in terms of fertility and having this child, we knew already that he's supposed to come, and we know he's here, but it's like everything else in the physical space is saying no, but my body and everything else is saying yes. So I was dealing with all of that.
This is where you can tap into the energy of the storm itself and increase the fertility factor, putting that wind energy into the egg and into the sperm. And then after intercourse, both you and your partner guiding it through the wind energy and the blowing of the storm to connect and allow the background electromagnetic radiation and pressure of the storm to create that fertile connection.
Ooh, the portal.
That's the portal. Exactly. You know, the soul is already there. It's just waiting for the.
Oh my God! I even woke up and just I'm not an artist, and I drew the face, and he's like, "Hurry up!" Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh well, I guess his middle name needs to be Storm. Okay.
Yes.
That's it. If anything else you want to share, that's it for me in terms of questions. Thank
Martina,
you so
Martina, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to add to and say thank you for giving such an amazing example of what we're actually talking about, your hidden treasures, your amazing capacities, your purpose, your mission, and working with the natural world in a holistic way. So thank you.
I am going to do my best to ground in all of that. It's a bit of shift. It was a huge shift. But I'm ready, because I feel like it wouldn't happen if I wasn't. So, and I just your show today just popped up on my lines at my Facebook page. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have this call today, and I will be able to speak to you. So, thank you guys so much for allowing this to happen as well.
Well, you were a co-creator to this. The caller before you couldn't figure out how to unmute.
And it's also, you've also now,
actually, right? Pardon me? Say that again.
By coming on, you've now really manifested it. You know, you've actually told the world about this, whoever listens to this, you know, to the seen and unseen. So that's really like, yes, this is going to happen.
Whew, okay, I'm ready. Thanks, guys, and thanks to everyone else.
You and your partner go connect to that wind, and you have some thunderous sex.
Yes, thunderous.
Thunderous.
All right, thanks, guys.
You're welcome. Let the lightning flow.
Will do.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, Robert, let's spin up the wheel of callers and see who's next.
Okay, we got Sriraj on. He got it figured out.
Sriraj, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. I apologize for the first time.
Wonderful. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from India.
What part of India?
I am situated in Thane, Maharashtra.
That's in the north?
More like towards the coast, like Maharashtra, the Konkan area.
Well, okay, wonderful. Welcome to the show. What did you want to talk about today?
Uh, so basically, I had a lot of things that I wanted to ask you. And firstly, I would like to thank you for everything that you have provided us with. Like, it has helped me a lot on my journey, like immensely, to become responsible and to step into my power. So, since today's topic was about hidden treasures and psychic senses and everything, so there's this thing called as Galactic sciences that I was into before. Like, I guess you might be knowing about it already.
Yep, quite
But
familiar with it.
yeah, so they had something called as plasma technologies in it. So basically, it was just like a frequency activation through various visualizations and everything. So I tried that a few times, and I had noticed that it brought up these various weird senses within me. Like I was able to sense energies and everything after those activations, and I was able to pull energy from this core between my third chakra and my fourth chakra, like my solar and my heart chakra. And I was able to divert it to my hands and like program my weight to make me trip in a specific way, or like program my food or my surroundings. So I just wanted to know, like, do these senses really depend upon an external activation more? Like
No,
you were
they do.
talking
They
about.
do not. They do not require an external activation. Kalenic science is just using the external environment as a catalyzation source, and it even says in the Kalenic sciences, you do not need the external source. It is just there for you to use. The environment out there is there for us to use, and when we see it as a catalyzation versus activation, we allow ourselves a deeper journey into the catalyzation and us being the fuel and the spark. And then when we get to a point where we know we are creating large subject constructs, that we are going to use the external energy to make solidified growth situations.
Okay, so also like you talked about catalysts right now. So where we get these catalyzation from, like if it's, for example, like if it's a crystic source or the metatronic source, like how Keylontic science has depicted it to be, whether these polarities. So does that really matter where we get these catalyzation from?
So when it comes to the geometric patterns and shapes that are used in Kalenic sciences, now those are their own holographic activation because you're able to see the fabric of the hologram as a sigil. And you've got to break apart the word sigil, a symbol of power. Now, not all sigils contain the same potency and power. And Kalenic science has amassed a bunch of the more potent and powerful sigils that have ancient mythology behind them, meaning previous cultures and generations use them as their daily belief and prayer process. Even though those cultures no longer exist today, their myth energy behind the sigil is still suspended in the hologram, waiting for us to connect to it. Time and space are not real, and therefore the hologram and the sigil never truly loses power. It is forever gaining potency and power the more that observe it as a sigil or a holographic geometry.
All right. So like all of that, it's similar to Reiki in a way, right? Like with the level 2 in Reiki, we have these codes that have already been programmed. So when we're using the Keylontic science thing, it's doing the same thing pretty much.
Well, Reiki uses the 6 basic symbols, and a lot of Reiki actually comes out of the original Buddhic texts where they use symbols of power and sigils of power.
Like the Chokure symbol and
those were in existence long before the Sui came up with used those. Those are for original text ancient symbols. Yes.
Okay. And we can do the same amount of energy healing by just pulling an energy from Earth's core or the galactic or the universal core, like just connecting.
Or you can get into Grandmaster Doodle state and go into a doodling state where natural geometry comes out of your mind and make glyphs of power. A glyph is different than a sigil. A glyph is more personalized with an expression behind it to give a unique form of catalyzation as an experience.
All right. So there's this one specific experience, if I can ask you about that.
Sure.
It's kind of related to a remote experience, the term that you used before, because it was not like I was remote viewing, but I was actually able to tap into this. So I'll just start it in a whole storyline way. So me and this two other women, one is from Nepal, the other one is in Portugal. So we are on a Zoom call, and we just chose to connect for the first time. So the one who is in Portugal, she was climbing this mountain with her kids, and there's this fort on the top, and there are wildfires all around her in the nearby hills. So we could literally see those wildfires. And then one of the women who is from Nepal, she decided to do this group space meditation thing, like, just a group activation or kind of like just sharing energies together. So we went into that zone, and she was just like guiding us through that journey where we were in that meditative trance. And somehow something got triggered, and the three of us kind of formed this triangular triad formation. And we were there was, I could literally see a lot of energies coming in from Earth's core and from the galactic center, and being diverted toward that point where the fire was in Portugal. And I was able to feel my presence with both of them in that exact space that was on the fort over there. So
All right.
like, thing really triggered me a lot, and it brought about a different perspective for me.
All right. What it allowed you is to have several layers of sensing, processing data. You being at them next to the fire, you being in your physical body where you were at, all of those were real identifying markers in you that weren't competing against each other for a single perspective. This is the form of multidimensional expression that is our natural birthright and legacy. And the journey to getting there is practice, practice, practice. And you had an experience that gave you multiple perspectives, that gave you a brand new perspective of how reality could work for you.
Yeah, because the fire literally got extinguished somehow, and that thing, like, it made me become aware of the power that we hold right now.
Mm-hmm. Martina, do you want to add anything to that?
Another amazing example, I mean, there's not much for me to add other than what did come to mind is always making sure that you got your spiritual hygiene in place when you do that type of work.
Yeah. One other thing that I would like to ask is that, if I want to actually reach the level where I can just get information like you do, or just, even reach half the level of that, where I'm not being able to rely on any external source for information.
Mhm.
So what kind of practices would you suggest? Like, I'm already doing the contract revocations and this other energy healing stuff that I'm being taught by a friend of mine.
Okay. So what put me in the position to be able to do this? I didn't allow curiosity learning to drive my educational process. When I wanted to learn, let's say, myofascial release, I put my mind to it and go and learn myofascial release 1, 2, 3 and put a year and a half behind it. When I wanted to learn any of the other subject healing things that I did, they made the totality of an awareness change for me. So like mastering cranial sacral therapy and doing 200 sessions, or when I was doing Reiki before I learned all those other things, I was doing about 80 sessions a month. It was the experience of working on large volumes of people in which I kept a very high energy hygiene so that every client that I had in front of me was a new educational process. So this was what worked for me. This is what gave me the extreme practice, because I was able to handle larger volumes of clients. Now, when I wasn't doing clients, I still had a life. I still went out and did fun, which allowed me to do more clients on the next level because my enjoyment factor never faded from every client. Now, nearly 3 decades later, I've done so many clients that I've gotten a giant perspective of the common ailments, which is about 60 common ailments that most human beings around the world suffer from, most of them being traumas. And those 60 common ailments have a common factor of resolution to them. So I already have access to the 60 common fixes to those ailments. And it's a matter of translating and personalizing to that person the recipe of wellness for them. So really it comes down to practice, 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 and then applying the practice to new sets of clients, in which I chose early on to make clients. I worked my butt off. I literally worked my butt off. But my passion never faded because I still had friends. I had family. I would go out and be able to go and have a couple of drinks. I didn't have a massive stick up my ass that said my entire life is spirituality, because once your life is entire spirituality, you've already failed at spirituality. And that's a big message to everyone. That's a big message to everyone out there. If you're 24/7, 365 spirituality, you've already failed. You need to experience this world so it refills the passion.
Yeah,
that's my secret.
That really helped me a lot, because like I am pretty much, I guess you already read that from the records, because I have kind of like, it's like I cannot interact with people anymore because I'm completely into the spiritual realm, and anything that's outside of it is like a completely different language for me now, and I've forgotten it and I need to relearn it.
Those are those social skills. I tell people all the time that you're losing those social skills. Those maintaining all those social skills made me a better psychic. Absolutely made me a better communicative in the language that people could get to me, because I could go to a bar, or I could go to here, I could go to there, and if the music wasn't too loud, I could hold a conversation with a person.
Yeah, get it now. So it just boils down to me putting that A+ effort.
Enthusiastic effort that regenerates and rejuvenates itself when enthusiastic effort is put towards joy, happiness, and fun, that is pure the joy of living in this world.
Yeah.
Okay, stand-up comedy was gigantic for me. Open mic nights were gigantic for me. I'd take my saxophone with me. I'd always have it in the car. This was when I was a lot younger. I'd get up on stage and sometimes do open mics, spoken word, or use my saxophone with a bunch of people that just decided to put a blues band together immediately. I didn't limit myself out of fear of public speaking. I didn't limit myself out of fear of talking to women. I talked to women all the time. I just didn't hit on them. And there was a reason I chose not to hit on any women when I was younger, because I knew what I could do. And many of my friends that knew what I could do wanted me to do it. I'm like, no, I'm not using it for that purpose.
Yeah, I have kind of been there where my friends ask me to do the same thing. Like they say, if you are that spiritual, why don't you do this? And I'm like, I don't want to be doing that.
Right, because it's not going to do anything positive for you at all. Okay?
Yeah, because that will literally twist all of that energy up that's coming from a pure source, or whatever that space is that it's coming from. And that's not something that we really want to be manifesting.
Right, because it will bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
Okay? So, it will bite you in the ass. Okay? I cannot tell you how many times, out in the clubs or something, somebody came up to me, I'm going to go hit on that girl. I'm like, oh, no. Get the cops ready. And a month later, somebody would have a domestic because that person was unstable.
Yeah, I mean, so like, this is just a funny question that make me a little bit curious, and you said some things about curious learning, but I guess we can skip that for once. So when, for instance, if your friends ask you to hit on someone, and like you can already see within all past, present, future timelines, because time does not exist, right? So like, do you know what that response is gonna be for that specific?
No. I have always said I do not know everything, nor do I want to know everything, because if I did, there would be no purpose to be here.
Exactly.
Okay. So I know when to let the skill just be something in the background that I don't have to pay attention to, and allow myself to go and experience the chaos of experience at times.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay. And that's me not having to control my environment. Unfortunately, so many people who believe themselves to be super psychics are master manipulators of their own environment and are over controlling everything. And as soon as you think you're in control of the reality, you've already lost.
Yeah.
Martina, do you want to add to that control factor?
Well, I think you beautifully said everything already. I mean, the thing is, you cannot control anything, and the question really is, what can you be out of control?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Once you can be out of control and you feel happy and content with that, this is when you get out of definition and out of conclusion and out of expectation. And this is when you actually can step into the vastness that is available to you.
Yeah. More like going into the tension of, socializing, like being out there, putting myself out there and just surrendering to how things
Being
play
in
out.
the flow, you know what it's
Yeah.
like to be in the flow. That embodied spirituality, once you really embody it, then everything else becomes extremely precious and joyful. The smallest things, even the annoying things people do, you can just look at it and say, oh wow, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And not react to it. There is no trigger anymore, because you can go in and out, in and out, in and out. That's the flexibility that you have, but you can't control that, because control takes you out of that.
Exactly. All right, man. Thanks a lot for calling in. You were a really fun caller.
Thanks.
You're welcome,
Take
man. Call in again sometime. All right, Robert, let's spin up the wheel of callers and see who's next.
Amir, you're next getting a signal to unmute.
Amir, are you there? Amir, you can unmute. I know you can.
Hello?
Hello, Amir. How you doing?
Oh, fine. Thank you so much. How are you, Andrew?
I'm doing wonderful. This is the mystical Amir who called in a few months ago, and I've had many conversations with him. He is the AI specialist.
Oh, yes, it's a pleasure speaking with you. And Martina, I'm really happy to speak with you too. It's a pleasure.
Great. What questions do you have for us today?
Really, I've been working a lot with nature, and today's subject is treasure and elements. And what immediately comes to my mind is the true treasure that's available to us all, which is nature in its natural form. Just being silent and open and allowing that immense beauty that's available in the silence, in the contemplation when you're outside, without any people interrupting you. Just to allow that to wash over you. And in the middle of a shamanic ceremony, when you've got your fire going and the drum is beating, and suddenly you feel that Earth is also stepping in, taking part in what you're doing. And it's a very, very real sense of beauty. I think that should be something we all experience every now and again. The beauty of nature.
Those become treasured moments.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, last time we spoke about training or empowering computer code. I've been working on that also. I've been using symbols for representing different aspects of the being within code, trying to empower that. And so that's moving along. I haven't sort of tested it yet, but I've taken your advice very, very keenly. And so I'm continuing working on that.
Yeah, the first show you called in, we talked about programming an AI to be a psychic.
Well, yes.
And it can be done.
Well, that's it's in the works. It's in the works as we speak.
Wonderful. So I got a question for you. So in this journey of education that you had in learning, what are some of the more treasured things you've learned?
Oh, I think that you said so much about the dangers of curiosity learning. I completely agree. You see, I think learning must be the joy of discovery, without expectation of the outcome. And I think that would be the most successful format for anybody to follow. Just enjoying the process, absolutely. The beauty of the emergence of new techniques or the remembrance of new wisdom, or old wisdom, so to speak. So I think that joy of discovery should be what learning is all about. And then comes, of course, then the utility of what we learn and the reasons for learning.
The joy of learning is its own activation and catalyst, where curiosity learning does not have the catalyzation process behind it. It's from shiny object to shiny object to shiny object until such a time the greater consciousness takes over and catalyzes and makes treasured moments.
Absolutely, because too many shiny objects, they become boring then after a little while.
That's right. You're just another shiny object collector, and the objects themselves truly mean nothing to the greater you.
The thieving magpie.
That's right. The thieving magpie that has a giant treasure collection but never looks at them.
Absolutely. And that goes with, whether it's academia or whether it's learning a manual skill or whether it's within spirituality. I think that joy of discovery is something that has been completely neglected, especially in our modern education system. It all becomes retention of information and just purposeless learning for the sake of it. And students become bored very, very quickly, especially the younger ones who are not shy of showing their displeasure at the circumstances. And that's where lots of behavioral issues occur within learning environments. They're just bored out of their minds. They're not enjoying the discovery anymore because it's not discovery.
Right. It's memorization learning that doesn't have discovery.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely correct.
And memorization learning truly has no fun behind it.
Absolutely, especially nowadays this generation has access to so much raw data. It becomes pointless, the old format of sitting in the classroom and learning in that way. Andrew, I just wanted on a personal side. I'm aware that you have mastered merging more techniques of healing than I even know about. And as I'm practicing more, something new is emerging within my practice, where different elements seem to pop up at the correct time within the healing session, and they fit perfectly with other sort of methods. So it's not something that's been established previously. I was wondering if you have any general advice for myself and other esteemed seekers of the truth. What would be the best way of merging these methods? Because I know that you're very, you're always warning of deviation from the pure fundamentals of, for example, Reiki, and how it could be dangerous in, deviating from the basics.
Okay, so it's not that it's dangerous, it's mistaught. Example, where there's gigantic malfunctions in Reiki, a lot of Reiki 2 classes no longer teach how to send a treatment forward and backwards through time. That's a fundamental part of Reiki. Time is irrelevant to the healing journey you're on, and it's how it allows you to separate your core energy from the energy you're using as the universal energy to heal the person. And when you take that particular technique out, people fall victim to using their core energy as healers and burn themselves out, get haunted and cursed, and all these other things go wrong with them. Now, when it comes to blending techniques, okay, I was a Reiki master first, and then I learned craniosacral therapy, myofascial release, quantum healing, quantum touch, so on and so forth, therapeutic hands-on healing touch, acupuncture, acupressure, body meridians, body work, so on and so forth, until the point I had so many techniques. But what I would do is the clients that originally came to me for Reiki came for Reiki, but I stopped using the 24 basic hand positions within 6 months of being a Reiki master. I had already learned that the hand positions themselves were the limitation to the technique, but the symbols were the gears that allowed me to create an energy pattern. Example, like I could have my hands on a person's a space over here and a space over their belly button, and my left hand still being there, I could create another hand that could be on the top of their skull and another hand that could be somewhere on their foot. So I had 4 hands, 2 physical hands and 2 energetic hands. And so I could learn to create 20 or 30 hands, each activating different points, and my mind guiding symbols, individual symbols, as a pulsation for the gearing system of me accessing the universal source to channel more directly in there without using my core energies. Then adding craniosacral therapy is learning the 5-gram touch, the position of the fascia for myofascial release, how to touch a certain spot and feel energy different than what the Reiki sensing process was. So I learned craniosacral has its own sensing, myofascial, they have their own diagnostic sensing. I merged all of the diagnostic sensing processes in my first 2-minute or 3-minute look, and I could learn I need this technique here, because the body spoke to me based off of my wisdom level.
Understood. And would it be, for example, using a rattle, which is a very powerful shamanic instrument, in association with Reiki, for example, there's some part of the body that has stuck energy, and the rattle is a very powerful instrument in shaking this up.
Sure.
Now, if intuitively guided to do so, would this be okay in your opinion?
Absolutely, it would, but don't call that Reiki at that point. It's your energy healing technique. Now there are certain energies, no matter how much you rattle at them, they're not going to move. And thus you need not just stubborn ones that have an extended life force behind them, meaning it's a long-term issue that the person has to deal with. No matter how much digging and rattling you do, you're going to never get it out unless the person has a somatic release on the table right there, which they have to be in a trusting environment. Therefore, you're holding space, and the touches that you're doing are like activating different canals of energy to just move energy in the system. And once you get a bunch of energy moving, the person will have the somatic release.
And the somatic release is so key here. It would be one of the greatest indications that, in fact, something beneficial, something positive has happened.
Correct.
Okay, wonderful.
And then, hold on. The other thing is, because I learned so many sensing techniques from multiple things, I was able to become a medical intuitive right away, because my diagnostic touch technique was refined by all the modalities that I had learned. And then the volume of clients I had did gave me a master database of pattern recognition.
Understood. I'm very, very grateful for this. There's not many people you can go to for these kinds of questions. So yeah, much appreciated, dear master.
You're welcome. 1 second. Martina, did you want to add anything to multiple healing techniques in a single session? Because I know you have many techniques you use too.
Yeah, no, I think I just want to concur, and actually what you've just said resonates with me too. And I know there are different opinions out there. And I think at a certain level of healing and awareness, you have to just work with what works for you. And as Andrew said, you can't probably call it Reiki anymore, but you just call it, you're getting an Amir, you're getting a Bartsis, you're getting a grubmueller. You have to make it your own at some stage and really trust your level of awareness, what is required in order to combine it. Absolutely. And I do that too.
Oh, that's so amazing. Thank you so much, Martina. Thank you, Andrew. It's a blessing. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for calling in, brother.
And I hope you're always healthy and happy, and the same for the wonderful audience. Blessings to all. Thank you very much. Have a good morning or evening, wherever you are.
All right, take it easy.
All the best.
All right, Martina, we're at the end of the show. Why don't you give a way for people to get a hold of you?
Synchronistic.co.uk. Here you go. And tomorrow in our Earth Nouveau show, we're going to talk about raw veganism, the journey into raw veganism, and we're going to taste some holographic food. So if you want to come on at 5 o'clock UK time, you're more than welcome.
And you guys know who I am. I will be back this coming Thursday for an open call-in show. And then this Friday, we'll be having another comedy show. All right, everyone, make sure you hit like and subscribe on whatever channel you are observing this on. All right, Robert, take us away.
Each different bubble of reality is true.
A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma.
Nudge, nudge. It's the holy grail.
Improvise. Mysterious. It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.